Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now, we are joined by, of course, Arwin, joining right in the middle of my introduction, Eli, Neil, 10th Man, and a whole bunch of people in Gilded, so welcome one and all.
I was
Good morning,
3
good morning.
seconds before your introduction, Nathan.
Yeah, there's a 20-second delay.
You're supposed to say hello.
Hello. Good
Hello,
afternoon.
good to be here.
Welcome back.
Nice to see you, Arwin, my absolute favourite of all time. Hopefully been keeping
Yeah, I've been
people
holding
sane
up
while I've
the
been away.
fort here.
I know Flatsoid has. Kudos to you and Flatsoid. Holding the fort, so to speak. I've had a week off in case anyone's watching this after the fact and wondering what the hell I'm babbling on about. I've just been off for a week. On a £5 sun holiday. Very brilliant it was too. Anywho, now we're back, let's do a bit of housekeeping. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere-edge horizon, formerly known as the curve of the Earth, since I've been gone?
You're going to need a radius
Yeah, man.
value
The
too.
Earth bulged up and all that. Why did you go away? Now the Earth is all bulged up.
Wait, did Nathan? Did you say you went for a sun holiday? Did you get unknown burn?
Unknown burn? No, it was a late summer holiday, so there wasn't that much sun. By sun holiday, I mean the paper. We have a newspaper called The Sun, and you can gather vouchers from the Sun newspaper and then get a holiday for £5, which is what my wife did. Because we're poor. So we did what poor people do, and we had a sun holiday.
You should come to America. They give you 100 grand, give you free healthcare, housing, everything.
Oh, here we go. This political discussion in the pre-show was just very
I don't
irritating.
have
No matter
any
how many, I
holiday.
tried 5 times to segue it back to flat Earth and the outer space that was formerly beyond the horizon and the new worlds that were labelled on the maps after recently being discovered and then inundated by immigrants. Now, the powers that should not be that have set up shop on these lands that are owned by nobody and dictate what you're going to do when you get there are considered to be the land, and landing on it, they're not. But anyway, that's in the
Yeah.
pre-show.
A little different than we had, but go on. But yeah, you're going to need a R value to have that curvature, but we don't even have that.
Any evidence of the R value? That's Earth radius.
No, there's no evidence of it because you don't have curvature. The horizon is not Earth curve.
Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety? Feel free to join in, Gilded.
I was talking to a guy here in Idaho now, and his brother was there with him, and he found out I was a flat earther, and he says, well, tell him. I go, tell him what? He wanted me to do the flat earth thing with him. So I said to him at one point, I said, do you feel the earth is spinning? And he said, no. And I go, then why do you believe it? And it was just this big silence.
Hey, Chocolate. Check. Hey, Chocolate. Any evidence of axial
Thanks.
rotation of the Earth-based variety?
We wouldn't expect to see any Coriolis deviation on a ball based off a flat Earth model.
I'd agree with that. So would Simon Dan. Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
Nope. no distance to any of the celestials, just apparent distances. I mean, whereas the celestials are about as local as the horizon is.
Next time, Brian. Sorry, go ahead. Ah,
No, I
Brian,
was going to
perfect
say.
timing. Go ahead,
I was
whoever it
gonna
was that
say
asked. Go on.
Yeah, it was me. But Brian's here. So, Brian, why do they want distances to luminaries in light years? What's the purpose for that?
Why do they want it in light years? Well, because they have to have the. Well, it starts off with the. I'm fading back on someone there. It starts off with the sun, you see, because they have to call the sun a star, and that we rotate or orbit around that star. But the whole point of it is actually shadows. It goes back to Eratosthenes, because with Eratosthenes, they had to claim that the sun was very big and far away. I'm still feeding back on somebody there. They had to claim the sun was very big and far away to make the shadows work on a curved surface on a globe. Because otherwise the shadows, if the sun is small and local, then all shadows prove that it's not a globe. And that's admitted by them. So that's where that started. And then they needed to eventually come up with this 40 light year because they needed to be able to make the stars all like basically a load of suns in basic terms that were all really far away, just like our sun is really far away and really big. That's where that all originated from, because it comes from shadows. That's the real reason they need light years, if you think about it.
So, what about the speed of light? How did they arrive at that?
Well, the best they've got is a guy called Fizeau, and he was claimed, I can't remember the date, but it was definitely a long time ago. It wasn't in the 19th century. It was way back in at least the 1800s. And he is claimed to have measured a series of microseconds. Now, microseconds there's 1,000 microseconds in 1 second. So if he measured 16 of them or something stupid like that, because he had a distance that was just less than a two-way, like it's the full two-way distance was just less than 10 miles. So for what he did. So like all he had was like the claim is a two-way claim, not a one-way claim. And he had a distance of less than 10 miles. So if you think what a light year is supposed to be, 1 light year is basically 1 AU, which is basically the average distance between the globe and the heliocentric sun over a 12-month period. That's around 93 million miles an hour. 93 million, let's say, statute miles. So for him, and it takes the sun in their model, takes it 8 I'm still feeding back on somebody, or somebody's speaking through that.
Maybe try and mute for just 1 second while I follow up with a question that you can strap onto the end, and after you've muted, it should sort the problem. It's just because you started talking as soon as you joined. So maybe pop yourself on mute just now. There we go. Once you've finished wrapping this up, lots of commenters have been asking, is it possible to actually get the distance to the sun now we know that the Earth is flat? It's paraphrased to now you know, which makes me think that they're ballers, implying that we should be giving them the straw man for the false dichotomy. But I'll take it as it's read and say to you, after you finish whatever you're summarising for 10th now, if you can explain why that isn't possible to just derive a distance to the sun now we know it's a flat plane. But feel free to continue. Hopefully that will resolve the feedback issue.
Yeah, I answered that pretty swiftly. Within our model, it's a 8.03 minutes it takes the light to get from their sun to their globe Earth. So how did they calculate this from? It's still getting feedback. I don't know. I just say keep going. Just telling you, Nathan, so you know. But how did they calculate this or measure this within a couple of microseconds? They never did. They started off with a pre-assumption, because Fizeau was only working off of the original pre-assumption, which is that it all has to fit with Kepler's analemma. It does like they have to pre-assume a globe, pre-assume a particular size of a globe due to a pre-assumed radius, pre-assume that the sun was XYZ, pre-assume we orbit around it, and pre-assume that it was a certain distance away. So it's like, I mean, a couple of microseconds. I'd say a computer would have even what we have now with the technology we have now, to get a computer to measure that speed, you can't find a computer that can actually measure what they call the speed of light. Even what they call the two-way. You can't even get a computer to measure it. It would have to be calibrated to what they already believe it to be. Because like a couple of microseconds, if there's 1,000 microseconds in every 1 second, then over a 10-mile distance, like, which would be less than 5 miles for Fizeau, less than 5 miles in both directions, right? How could he have measured microseconds? Like, it'd be a tiny amount of like 16 microseconds or something stupid like that. How could he ever have measured that? If
16 microseconds of what?
In today's world,
What's he
wouldn't
measuring?
be able to measure that.
What's that? What's he
Do you know what I
measuring?
mean? Did he have a supercomputer brain? No, he just calculated it based off of it. He calculated it based off of an already existing pre-assumption.
What's it?
Now,
You keep saying that
the
and
speed of
it.
light. Sorry,
He's calculated
speed of light.
that and it. What is it?
Sorry.
So he's saying he's
Speed of light.
calculated whatever
Two-way
number of
speed of light.
microseconds, but what specifically is actually claimed to be being measured?
The two-way speed of light.
Yeah,
The
but
two-way speed of light.
I get that. I know what we're talking about, but what I'm saying is, if I say, based on my model with a derivation of an R and Venus having the same R as Earth and the distance to the Sun being derived from Kepler's third law of interplanetary motion and all the scaling values applied with those two assumptions in place, I get this distance to the Sun. And the light travelling takes this long, 8 point whatever seconds you said. I thought it was 7, but that's just probably common mistakenly put into Wiki. In any event, they give you a value. Then they say they've measured that value. Now, I get what you're saying. They're saying that the distance in that model, which we don't exist in, is a certain distance. Therefore, you can get the speed. Okay. What do they physically claim to actually measure?
The distance to the sun.
So it's based in the heliocentric model based on the derivation from Kepler's third law. So there's no actual measurement. It's a derivation from the model.
Yeah, there's 4. You have to pre-assume 4 things before you can even calculate. So you're not measuring.
Sure. But to get this speed, this is an arbitrary number that is not measured. So when they say they've measured it to a certain number of nanoseconds, they're talking about how they've calculated it down to that value, as opposed to actually measuring anything at all.
Yeah, that's all it is. It's a pure calculation based on a belief, a
Fine.
heliocentric belief.
Fine, so we can expand on that. So we can say that based on elevation angle measurements to Polaris and the use of the celestial sphere model, you can derive a world that's sphere-shaped after conversion. That conversion, once given you an R value, can be superimposed onto Venus, a light in the sky, to give you the ability to apply Kepler's third law. And in so doing, it scales out every light in the sky, including the sun, and gives you a distance to it. But you have to guess one of the values, the size of one of the planets, in this case Venus. And once you've guessed that, you can then use Kepler's third law to give you all of the numbers in terms of distances and therefore speeds. But there is no actual measurement of this speed of light. There is no speed of light. It's total horseshit.
Yeah, and the
Can
question you
anybody
asked,
hear me?
Yes, we can now.
the question
Yay.
you sorry,
Good morning, guys. Sorry.
Hey, Chocolate. Just one sec, though.
the,
Go ahead, Brian.
the question you asked about why we can't measure distance to the sun, all we have is angles. So all you have is an apparent position, an apparent distance. All you have is an apparent let's just say, position, because you're measuring perspective. And all you get out of that is a subsolar point, or on the Earth, or like a GP point on the Earth. You're only measuring that. As soon as your angle changes, then whatever the distance to the sun that you measured last time will be different. So you can never get a measurement to the sun. Like, for instance, a question I put into, I think it was the War Room over the weekend, is if I take let's say a 35.1 degree angle to the sun, then the GP point of that sun will be the same distance away from me as if I take a 35.1 degree angle to a star. So, how could the sun, under those conditions, be closer or further from the stars that we see in the sky? Do you know what I mean? We have no idea what the sky is.
Right.
You can take several people taking angles and calculate it out, but as soon as any of those angles change, your final calculation will change.
You guys remember back in 2015 where they showed some deep sea exploration where they got down to a certain level and found what looked like another layer of liquid, and they tried to go down into it and just basically bounced off it, but it looked like the edge of a cliff at the bottom of the ocean with another layer of ocean beneath the ocean that they couldn't penetrate.
Yeah, it was super saline, and they couldn't go into it. It was so dense they couldn't send their little submarine thing down into it. It wouldn't go into it.
In terms of, you know, as it's flat Earth debate, and we might as well talk about stuff that is commonly associated with stories of flat Earth or assertions of that. The turtles on top of turtles on top of turtles thing. You all familiar with this?
Yes.
Yeah, I am.
Turtles all the way up.
Turtles all the way down. Correct. Well, that notion has a layer cake of Earth as opposed to what we know it is not, which is a sphere Earth in a vacuum flying through space around a spherical sun. Well, if we don't know what's below, what's to say that the principle is any different above? But just in terms of the density. So it's interesting you got straight to the nub of it, which was that it's super dense. Makes sense, right? It's got a whole load of stuff on top of it, pressing down on it. So it's going to be under tremendous pressure at the bottom of the ocean. Well, the adverse is true as you go up, right? Less and less pressure. So what's to say that there isn't another region beyond what we know that's just not attainable for us? In the same way, it's not attainable for a fish to go into our realm, if you will. It's just a layer below us. Yes, Nathan, very interesting.
No, that was a cool take. I like that.
I'm not saying it's turtles, by the way.
No, it isn't, but it's true. I mean, we can't go down into that layer. It's first of all, it's so deep we can't send men down there, and secondly, you can't go into the layer. I think it's so deep you can't send. I don't think a manned vehicle can go down. But either way, you can't go into the layer with a submarine. It was even in the,
Is there a
I don't know
globe
why
Earth
they just hook them
explanation
up
for
with
that?
some aluminum foil. That seems to work out beautifully. Some aluminum foil, some duct tape.
Oh, you're talking about the pantomime that is space and the claims of outer space, the sky vacuum, and what takes place in that fake place that they stage on Earth, on sets, with high wire. And in that fake place, where Buck Rogers also resides, and astronauts reside, well, they can put tin foil around things to stop huge amounts of pressure escaping from a vessel, and if that does get breached, they can just stick their thumb over it, things like that. But, you know, you can have a bionic man, you can have Sonic the Hedgehog come from space, you can have all sorts of things come from space. But space, in that context, outer space, isn't real. So you can make up whatever you like.
I think you all missed Brian's clever pun. In order to go there, you need a super sailing certification.
Any evidence you can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container to press upon?
Gradient, Nathan. Gradient.
Yeah? What about it?
That's a throwback.
I'm doing
We
this
have
because...
layers, like layer cake. So
Psyche.
Yeah, what about it? Gas pressure. Gradient It's still a gas pressure. It still needs to press on something.
You can't have gas pressure without a container. If it was possible to have gas pressure without a container and not to look past plasma being held in place by a toroidal field, because that's a different thing. Because plasma is ionized gas, it's not gas. So people have shown that to people. And I'm sure it still goes on Facebook and TikTok and stupid places like that, where people show people plasma being held in place by a toroidal field to someone who's uneducated on the matter.
Oh,
No.
that still has a container?
It does, yeah. Well, that's the thing about it. The toroidal field is within what? It's within hydrogen fusion reactor, which is a container.
Right.
They require that for all things.
So they're saying that they've got a gas pressure without a container in a container?
They've got a container which they need to have for the vacuum in the first place.
So they've got a vacuum for they've got a container for their vacuum to create gas pressure without a container inside a container. So it's not without a container in a container, it's just in a container.
Yeah, it's not possible to create vacuum, temperature, or pressure without a container.
The containment's
Doesn't,
definitely required then. I had to blow some guy's poor sod's mind when I went on holiday this week. So I got there, and being a smoker, I couldn't smoke in the caravan that we had rented. So I sat in the car like an idiot. I left one of the lights on. So I came back the following morning. Actually, not the following morning. About 4 o'clock in the morning, after being sick several times, I looked outside and saw a little flashing, blinking LED from inside the car. And I went, oh no. Oh, no. So I went outside and it wouldn't work. I couldn't even get the damn thing unlocked because obviously it's electronic. So I had to call the guy from the caravan park, the maintenance guy, who comes down to try and jump it with a car, and it didn't work. Sorry, the segue won't last long, I promise. But then he got a battery zapper thing which worked perfectly. And while we sat there figuring out how to get this car running, it just got a flat battery. He asked me what I did, and of course I had to tell him. And he poked, and because it was just me standing there with a dead car and I couldn't escape, eventually I had to tell him what I did. Now, what I try and do, if somebody asks me what I do so I can avoid the conversation when I don't want to have it. For instance, when we got back, my youngest daughter had a seizure. We called an ambulance, and they did the same thing before taking my kid to hospital. What do you do? Why is there all this sound treatment everywhere? And you go, I do a show on, quote, cosmology. That's normally enough to put people off asking any further questions. But in this guy's case, not a bit of it. Cosmology? What's that then? Oh, God, it's coming. I can feel it. So while we sat there, I had to take him through gas pressure without a container. Now, eventually, he caught me out, because this guy was just inquisitive, right, this mechanic. And eventually he started asking me about various different religions that understood the Earth to be flat. And I didn't have any. I just thought, I don't know. I think I rattled off one that was probably wrong. But he completely caught me out, because it's like, it's not something I ever really look into. But there we go. I had to flat smack the guy, just because he charged my battery and ruined his day. Told him that space was
Why
fake.
you hiding that you're a flat earther anyway?
I don't normally like flat smacking people. Typically, you don't have to... Go on.
You're on vacation from Flat Earth, Neil. You don't talk about it.
It's not that I just don't like ruining people's day. That guy had done nothing wrong, right? No, I empathise with the people on the top of the hill. I don't empathise with the people at the bottom of the hill with us that are saying it's a globe.
What?
They've already fallen down the
Why?
hill. But your average Joe normie that stood at the top of the hill, just going about his business on his globe. Now, I don't want to ruin that guy's day. That's not ever my intention. I'm not envious. I don't want to be back on the hill oblivious to the fact that we're being lied to about being on a sphere and blissfully go about my day not really thinking about it. And if it ever comes on TV or you see it in Superman, you don't give it a second thought. You just suspend disbelief. Well, I don't necessarily want to take that away from anybody. That's not my bag. I don't want to do that. If they come here and find their way to us here, that's different. Then it's fair game. But just guy who's helping me out, I don't want to ruin his day and tell him that his entire worldview is a complete sham.
See, that's the problem.
Sometimes you can't help that though, right? Because like the guy that was driving the Uber driver was taking me to the airport one time. who just, I wasn't planning on speaking at all. I just wanted to sit in the back and listen to my music. And he wouldn't stop talking and telling me how flat and beautiful the water he was just looking at was. And I was just like, oh my God, like, I don't even want to go there, but eventually I'm gonna have to, because he's used the word flat, first of all, like 5 times to describe how beautiful the water was and how far he could see. And I'm just like, oh my God. All right, I guess I'm gonna just have to do it real quick because he just won't stop. And I did it.
Nathan.
I was just like, it just looks like that because that's what it is. And then he was like,
Nathan.
wait, what do you mean?
Oh,
Hold
Can
on,
you hear
Ted.
me? I'm sorry.
no, I just thought chocolate was finished twice. Sorry. Nathan, when Matt
Really?
Powerland,
All right.
when
guess I'm
you
finished.
listen, it's all right. When you listen to Matt
He was
Powerland, did it
telling
ruin your
the
day?
story, man. He
Look,
was in the
this is
middle
going
of
to
the
descend into
story.
chaos just because 10th's done it and carried on. Yeah, just let him. Then we'll get back to chocolate. Go ahead, 10th.
When you listened to Matt Powerland for the first time, did that ruin your day?
Yeah. Well, I don't want to say it ruined my day. It was a massive life-changing event hearing Matt Powerland saying flat Earth without being in ridicule. Yeah, it did. It altered my life forever.
Okay, but did it ruin your life, your day? Do you have a show now because of
That's-
it? You're enjoying staying at home? Come on.
That's a
Did it ruin
question
your
of
day?
perspective. That's a question of perspective with the same exact input, isn't it? So I won't say no. I've made a career of it. So no,
Okay.
but I'm saying that there's a good chance that you'll ruin someone's day.
Hang on. This is the point I want to. I'm opposed with you at. It's not ruining anyone's day when you alert him that the reality that he's given is not real, and there's a way to check it out and find out. It's now if they don't want it, just stop talking, and that way you don't ruin his day. But if he's interested, you keep talking, and you don't ruin his day. So you talk to those that have ears to hear, and you don't talk to those that don't have ears to hear. It's pretty simple.
I've got
he said.
I've got a habit of ruining
Nah.
people's day with this.
Nah, some people want to hear it and their day will get ruined anyway. That's just how it's gonna happen.
I just see the look in their eyes
But Nathan,
when you tell them this stuff. The contemplation. Go ahead, whoever that was.
can you finish your story, Chocolate?
Shout out to Godzilla. Says 5 days off equals 5 more hours. No, it doesn't. Thank you for the super chat, though. Chocolate, go ahead.
The story was pretty much finished. It was just basically like the guys driving me to the airport couldn't stop telling me how flat and beautiful this water that he just went to go visit was. And I just had to tell him, yeah, that's just because it's just flat. And he kind of just looked at me through the rear view. What do you mean? Well, what I mean is, basically what you described to me is what it actually is, as opposed to what you think it is, which is a ball. And he got quiet and said, nah, that's no. And I said, what do you mean no? You just told me it's flat 15 times. You just told me how far you could see how beautiful it is. Yeah. Maybe you should check that out. And I didn't really want to get into any more than that because I just wanted to enjoy my cab ride. But that's how I left him. And he kind of stopped talking to me about how beautiful, in fact, the vacation spot was. And I kind of ruined his day. He seemed like a nice guy, but, his day got ruined.
Shout out to Sensual Goat, who says, it's a shame that having hosted Dave Weiss twice, Sean Atwood's channel is now hosting Sky Vacuum Priests punting crap. Those blue pills must really work. Thank you for the super chat. I've got to be honest, I haven't actually kept up with Sean Atwood's channel of late, so I didn't know that.
See, and I still disagree. I'll let Eli talk before I do, but go ahead, Eli.
Or don't. It's up to you. I mean, we're all good.
Or
We're only
don't.
live.
All right. Yeah. All right. So I disagree with you and Chocolate here because, oh gosh, what's going on here?
Go on, Eli.
I mean,
It's
you
this-
guys know I'm working. Typically, that it takes me a minute, couple of seconds to unmute my mic, unless I want to do it in the middle of going 20 miles an hour. Like, this is stuff you know. Why are you getting so irritated, son?
Because it's
Well,
irritating.
who's irritated?
Because it's
I
annoying.
gave you the floor. I gave you the floor, and you say I'm irritated. What the heck?
What's going on? You sound like Nathan, who's always irritated.
Sounds like me. I
What
was
do you
about to
mean?
say you sound like 10th, moaning at me for saying I'm not real in the
Sounds
pre-show.
like Eli's irritated.
Loud noises.
No, I honestly, I didn't. I don't know why I didn't have anything to say. I didn't say
You were
anything.
taught.
Well, that
You
was a
were
very
talking-
worthwhile disclaimer then. Thank you so much for the lecture.
Oh gosh, I see dead people. Anyway,
Calm down, Mr. President.
But there are no Venezuelan murderers imported into the States. It's all nonsense. Don't believe what you
I
see on the
knew
news.
it. I knew it. As soon as you said that, I knew Nathan was going to come with that.
that's right. He lives near London, where all kinds of the same things happen, but he just doesn't want to find out about it. It might ruin his day. Anyway, back to this guy. Back to this
Propaganda.
guy. Oh gosh. All right.
Yeah,
get it
yes,
all out.
I knew this would develop a discussion, 10th. What's that you say, propaganda? No, according to 10th.
Oh, no. Propaganda. Good one. Anyway, why you and Chocolate think it's ruining someone's day if they decide to have a conversation with you willingly?
Because there's a 50-50 chance they'll turn into an anti-flat earther. I don't know if it's 50-50, but I'm just throwing that out there.
What does that matter? If someone's willing to have a discussion on a subject matter,
You
with
mute Eli. Eli.
All right.
if someone's willing, keyword, to have a discussion with you on a subject matter that you are, say, well studied on, why would you not have it?
Same reason that you wouldn't necessarily want to tell people that the news isn't necessarily trustworthy, 10th. Similar thing.
No, I tell them that, but not all the news is false. I mean, see, this is the problem. You think that everything is a lie.
Yeah. I'm a hyper skeptic in that regard. Yes. Very little I take
Well,
as
that-
being
well,
true unless it's actually been verified. Yes, I'll totally agree with
Right.
that.
So primary source is good enough for you?
Primary source, yes, that's basically the gold standard.
Okay, good. So I know border agents. I know people in the FBI. I know these people and their primary source, and they tell me things. So,
All right, before you get into that, hold on then.
but
Ted.
that's not what I
Explain
want to
to me.
talk about.
All right, go ahead. I'm sorry.
All right. So well, it happened. I had two people asking me about flat Earth this weekend here in Idaho. Well, if they're asking me, I'm not thinking, well, if I start talking, I'm going to ruin their day. I'm not even thinking that. I'm thinking they're asking me, so I'm going to start. And because I asked the right questions, it progressed properly. I saw the eyes roll back in the head. I saw it all. And they answered all the questions and realized that NASA has lied to them and that their own 5 senses tell them something else. And many other things we covered. And we didn't have a bad situation whatsoever occur. I didn't ruin anybody's day.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if they're going to be a flat earther or not.
Okay.
Can I get back in the queue?
You can, but let me just make one point, which is having to recontextualize something, which typically I contextualize in a completely different way. Conspiracy Cat's discussing his interaction with flat Earth in general with Haunted House. Now, when I reference this, typically I say that he's talking about himself in the third person. When he talks about his mate that would find out that the Earth's flat and then have to contemplate all of the different things that would also potentially be lies in their world and how devastating and how much sleep you'd lose over that. Well, without recontextualizing how he paraphrased it, or how I've just paraphrased it, in the third person, he is describing Conspiracy Cats in this instance, that person that I'm talking about ruining their day. He's talking about that person's contemplation of all the further lies that would necessarily have to be contemplated if you understand that there's been a deception afoot when it comes to the nature of the reality of a sphere Earth that you thought you were standing on. Now, he's describing it in the third person, and so am I, when I say I don't want to ruin someone's day. There you go.
Okay, but in the long run,
I
in the
would say,
long,
can I add to that though? Like in the context of the story that I told, right? Like the guy didn't ask me Like, I understand what you mean. If somebody's asking you about it, it's going to ruin their day. But at the same time, I've had that happen because I've had people that know I'm a flat earther want to have the conversation, and then they get to that point at some duration in the conversation where they'll tell me their head starts to hurt, or they can't deal because the consequences of what I am saying means their entire life is some type of a lie, and they can't deal with that. So in the beginning of the conversation, it was all cool, everything was gravy, but then after that, once the thinking starts to get a little too deep, they stop me. They cut me off. Like, okay, great, yeah. Let's continue tomorrow, or maybe never, or I always get something. Even that one time I told you, I got somebody who
La 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 la
put
la.
his fingers in his ears and said, la la la, I can't have this conversation.
They're the ones you
Okay.
don't talk to.
All right, let me answer that. Eli, do you want to say something this time?
I was going to say, Eli, do you want to? You in the queue?
Yes. Thank you. So 2 points. The point that you're making, Seth, is exactly what Nathan says. Typically, he doesn't just talk to people straight out because he doesn't know whether or not they're gonna want to talk about it. But if they show a general interest, he can't refuse. Like, that's literally what he says. Second of all, I don't understand how you don't see a parallel between you saying you have primary sources and Zanuck saying he has primary sources. So I don't get it, but okay.
Well, Zanuck is a known liar. My gosh, this is crazy.
Yeah, that's not a
Anyway.
fair comparison, really, Eli. But there we go. I knew what your sentiment was, though. What you're saying is that there's honest people out there that would appeal to primary sources about war and the things that people have done in war, and then you dig a little bit into what they're claiming, and it's not actually true. They've stretched the truth a little bit, let's just say. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah, well, some of you ostriches need to get your head out of the ground sometimes. Anyway, back to ruining a day or not ruining a day. I was in that cigar shop a couple of weeks ago, and we were having a great old time talking about sports. And the guy made a gesture with his hands about the Earth being a planet. It was a perfect segue for me to say, so you think we live on a planet? That was my entry. It was a question. He says, his eyes looked at me in a weird way. He says, what, you don't think we live on a planet? And then I said, well, wouldn't a planet need a radius? And off it went. Next thing you know, we're in there an hour and a half. The owner's friend, that guy, and another guy are all involved, happy to discuss everything. I went through housekeeping questions. I even got their phone numbers. I've already sent them links to your show. See what happens when you and they didn't ask me about flat Earth. He just said planet. And I said, what, do you think you live on a planet? So one of them has already responded to me and said, thanks for the link. I will listen to this. So I don't understand why we have to wait till someone asks me or you. If they say something heliocentric related, you can pose a question. Depending on their interest level, they might answer, they might not.
We're not saying that. Let me draw it
gosh.
to a different comparison, right? Just because you've made it very salesy in terms of the way you look for your opening, and I can relate, right? Former salesman. But when I was in sales and on the clock doing what I did it very well. Made good sales, made good money, drove a nice car, all those good things about sales. But as much as I loved hi-fi and loved going into studios and flogging them amplifiers and going into dealers and flogging them equipment, once I was off the clock, if somebody asked me, how do I wire up my AV system? I can't seem to get Dolby Atmos to work via optical. I'd go, I don't care. I don't want to know. I don't want to tell you how to wire up your AV system when I'm not on the clock. Just similar sort of, it's shop. It's different for you. Maybe it's not different for you guys. I don't want to speak for you, but obviously this is my job. And as much as I absolutely love my job, when you're out on your holiday in the scenario I gave you, I don't necessarily want to stand there and talk shop with him, which is how it essentially is for me personally. It's talking shop.
So keep people in handcuffs, right?
I'm not
So
saying anybody. Let's just clear that up. Before you go on, nobody has to do anything, right? Me saying I'll potentially avoid talking about flat Earth with somebody who's, in this case, helping me out with a flat battery. Yeah? That doesn't mean you have to avoid it. Go and shout it from the hilltops. While you're doing it, tell them flat Earth debate's on.
I had a situation on Saturday evening time. I was in a shop, a local shop I go to. Well, it's a big shop, like, but it's the local one, Tesco's. And I know that I'm up there so much and so often over the years that I know basically all the staff. And I often end up being there at times where I get to talk to the staff because it's like on a low time, like late at night maybe, where there wouldn't be a lot of people in there. And I had two of the girls that work there talking to me, asking me what I do. And I wouldn't tell him. I didn't want to tell him because I don't want the situation to arise where I become a bad guy. Because it's not that I won't say anything to him about it. It's that if I say something to them and they go, oh, they might see me as weird afterwards, or they'll see me as whatever, and consequently then they have a different view of me. And it's like I don't mind the general public that don't know me. I don't mind that. But people that I know, I'd rather not have to have that conversation with them. Unless they really want to have it, then okay. But, I'd warn them in advance. If you really want to have this, I'll have it. But, there's even a member of staff up there who I have a laugh with, who's never ever would have ever looked into anything. And the past 2 years that happened changed his whole view of society. But even him, and he talked to me about things like that all the time, right, the past 2 years. But even him, I won't bring up the subject with. Because people just suddenly view you differently.
Yeah.
You're not that same person anymore.
Yeah. See,
Yeah, Ted thinks that we don't believe anything and everything is a lie because we're
no, Nathan said that. Nathan said that. I didn't say you. I didn't clump you in.
Well, I agree with him, so you may as well.
Okay. All right. Then I clump you in. All right,
Sorry,
so-
let's just clear
so-
this up
Call
as
me
well.
a
Hold
news
on,
denier. Go ahead.
Got to clear this up.
Make it feel good.
We're
Well,
not
if you
saying
say-
we
if you
don't
say
believe
all
anything. Hold on. You're just taking it to an extreme that I don't like. Right, no, we're not saying we don't believe anything. We're saying that unless it's got substantial evidence to back it, based on the delivery method, in this case mainstream news, I'm not willing to accept it without much stronger evidence. So it's Boy Who Cried Wolf. Okay? The news have cried wolf many, many, many times. Well, therefore, the standard for acceptance of their information, the standard goes up, exponentially up. And at the point that you figure out you've been, as we're talking about it, with people who have their day ruined because they're suddenly having to contemplate the lies they might have been told in other areas, that's exactly what we're talking about. One of them is the news. Well, if you figure out that they've lied to you ever, everything that they deliver to you has to have an aspect, for me and Eli, of hyper-skepticism applied to it. Therefore, the standards go up. The evidence that they've got to provide when they make any statements has got to be higher than it was before. For me, not you.
Oh, no, first of all, that's false. I agree with that last summary. You said 100%. I tell people the news lies often. So don't throw me in that gap. So anyway, back to the point I'm trying to make. When someone is asking a proper question, and I think this was based on Brian with the two ladies at that work that he didn't want to get into it because he didn't want to be looked upon as, oh, you're one of those flat earthers. I don't start that way. You start with a question. My goodness, learn some skills here.
Hey, Kent, that's the exact question my brother presented to me when I said, he goes, what, you think we live on a planet? That's strange that's how you start that out, because that got my attention.
Well, no, thanks, Neil, because I've done that many times, and people say, what, you don't believe we're on the Earth that's a ball? Or they'll say, oh, are you one of those flat earthers? My response is, do you feel Earth rotating right now? They go, no. And I go, so why do you think and believe we're rotating? Because someone told you? Question mark. And they say, well, yeah. I mean, why would they lie? Back to Chocolate Song. It just opens up for another question. I go, well, do governments lie to their people? They go, yeah. And I go, well, do corporations and tech companies lie to their people? Yeah. I go, so when they tell you you're spinning, but you have no evidence of spin, what would you call that? Did you see? It's just asking questions.
Yeah, but it's asking
It's
people
not that-
to alter a paradigm. And the way that alteration comes about is by acceptance of the suspension of disbelief. So in the Matrix, when Neo's fully up to speed, he knows he's been in a simulation, he's been pulled out of the simulation, he goes into a training program. He knows he's plugged into a computer that's just stuck a spike in his head. He knows he's in the computer. And yet, he has a fight in the training session, and after he loses, he's hungover, doubled over, panting. And Morpheus turns around to him and says, "You think that's air you're breathing?" Because up until that point, as much as even Neo, who's been unplugged and knows it, has a completely different way of understanding his reality ahead of him. And even after the fact, he still has some of those old things attached to him. Now, unlike Neo, your average Joe normally on top of the hill, wandering around oblivious, suspending disbelief about being on a sphere, none of those things have even... It's not that like they've got a list of things that they might have to contemplate in the rest of their day. They haven't got any things that they need to contemplate. Suddenly, that person that might be worried about their mortgage or their kids' schooling or whatever it is that they're stressed about that day, their wife leaving them, whatever it is that they've got on their plate, suddenly you've added to it. Because they've got to contemplate the nature of their reality and paradigm shift from being on a ball to having been lied to from left, right and centre and all the other things that might not be true as a result. I don't know. This is going to be a debate that I like having because I agree with Tenth and I admire the fact that Tenth's got this attitude. I wish everyone had that attitude.
I want to ask Brian a question. Brian, were the two young ladies pretty?
Come on, Neil.
Yeah, but that's not the point, Neil. The point is I know them. The point is I know them, and yeah, but they're too young for me anyway. Neil.
Oh, okay. So they would have started making fun of you. You're saying?
No.
Look at you different. I know exactly what you mean. Brian, I used to work in Tesco as a driver, and I used to go in, load up the van, and up until a point before my YouTube channel was popular, there was a transition stage where I was doing both. And hardly anybody at work knew that I did it, and that was how it stayed for the longest time. And you go in, you say hello, 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 you get on with your driving. Then a few people found the channel, and then that changed the way I worked from then on in. You know, you'd walk in, it's a ball. You don't want to hear that when you're just in to do your work.
Yeah.
Oh shoot!
I can't lie. Sorry, Eli. Go ahead, bro.
No, I was saying that's exactly what it's like. It's annoying because number one, people are going to try to get you into a conversation that you already know they don't want to have. Because the moment you say anything of substance of any kind, they go, oh, yada, 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 science, and then who gives a fuck? Yeah, sorry, excuse the cursing. You know, like, so, I love to talk to people about this. There's ways to open up, but I also get what Brian's saying because when I first, found out, about all this, the only thing I asked my people, just a particular community of 100+ people. And I said, hey, you guys I don't, what do you think about the moon landing? Have you questioned it? Thank you. And they immediately was like, oh, what do you mean? What are you, one of these flat earthers or something? Of course we went to the moon, the rocket technology and the blah, 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 blah. So, after that, you become the flat earther, and it's really annoying. You walk into a room and they're like, hey, yo, he believes it's flat. But they don't want to talk about it. They just want to joke at your expense.
What they're actually doing
that's why
is
you're the one that starts it off by going into the room and saying, "Hey, anybody found any measurements of curvature yet?" Because that's what I did.
no, but you're proactively combating that, Chocolate. But your attitude's very positive in that regard. But I think what's being described by Eli is a sharing of the pain, as we describe it. In other words, they don't want to have to contemplate it, and it's easier to pour scorn on the person that's told them when they walk in, attack the individual. So when I used to walk into work and hear people going, "It's a ball," or whatever example I can give, what went through my mind was, yeah, share your pain. Because you're contemplating it. You're telling me that you're contemplating it. But not in a way that means you're going to do any research, a way that contemplate then reject. How can I reject? Poke fun at the person that's told me. Or declare my faith to the person that's told me. It's a ball is their declaration of their faith that they didn't want to have to be contemplating.
Exactly. Like the guys said when I knew I was going on vacation, they knew I was going down south, and what they said to me was, right at break time when everybody was there, "Be careful, don't go too far. You may fall off the edge."
Exactly.
So
share your
came
pain.
back with, "You have an edge."
Well,
Yeah,
I
share
don't
your
know why
pain.
you guys. I don't know why you guys look at that as a bad thing. That means you're living in their head rent free.
I live in plenty of people's bed rent free, I assure you.
No, but my point is, I'm not trying to make everyone do what I do. That's not my point. In fact, I don't believe in coercion or compulsion and compulsory to force anyone anywhere. But if I don't go in the room and start a conversation, okay, if they say something and I don't know them, and there isn't someone in between, a friend of his who's also a friend of mine, it may never come up. But the point is, if the situation is right, and you feel that most of the time, it isn't anything that you plan for, it'd be on the spot, when you're out one day, then you say something, and then that starts it off. And if they continue, you keep going. But if they say, "Look, I'm not interested," you say, "Yeah, no problem. I respect that." And you stop. It's real simple. But if I could put a thought in their mind, I don't look at it as ruining their day. I think it's planting a seed that somebody else from some other corner in their social group will be able to water, and then eventually that person will do some research. So I just disagree with you guys when you guys label it as ruining their day. I don't think it's ruining their day.
Well, to answer what Neil was asking me, the whole point is that these are people I see on a regular basis. I know them and they know me, and I have a good reputation with these people. And it's not that I'm hiding what I do, but if I tell someone what I do and they come at me with questions, I'm going to annihilate their questions. I'm not going to have to, and I'm going to have to say, "Well, blah, blah, blah." And then it becomes a combative situation because people do not want to be told that what they've been told their whole life is wrong. And I just try not to have that with
Wait a second,
people.
Brian, you said one time you go into a party and you would be happy to ruin that freaking party. Was that a different situation?
That's a different situation, Neil. I'd be happy to go into a room full of people and tell them all from a podium where they're wrong. I have no problem with that. And if some of those people in there are people I know, well, they'll have to tolerate it. I'm talking about day-to-day interactions with people that like, I just don't want to have that all the time. Every time I'm up there so often at the shop, I don't want to have to be dealing with that, where people are giving me strange looks, or they're getting, I just don't want to have to. One time it came up there, and what happened was, this guy started asking me questions, and he was working there, nice fella, and I answered a couple of his questions. But then the next time he saw me, I'm at his till, right? And there's a whole line of people there, and he's asking me questions about this subject that is obviously controversial. This is a couple of years ago. And it was kind of like, you kind of put me on the spot here, where I might have to defend questions from people around me, or people around me here who I don't know, will see me strange. I don't mind if I'm up on a podium telling 2,000 people you're wrong, but I don't want to have that one-on-one thing in the shop. I just want to go to the shop and get along with people.
Yeah, that's not a problem, Brian. I'm not saying you should start it or you're committed to responding every time someone says the word planet. You get a feel for the room. You get a feel for what's happening.
That's the problem with me, is that people use certain words around me.
Yeah, they
I
know
have
they
to ask
trigger
them,
words.
what's that again? What's that? Yeah, people, they don't like it sometimes, but I enjoy it.
Well, look, Kent, you know that preacher David Jeremiah, right? I think he's actually in California, isn't he?
I think I know of him.
TV guy?
I think he's in San Diego somewhere.
Okay, so I'm watching the service yesterday, and he was talking about the end times, about earthquakes and things like that. And then out of nowhere, he puts on the screen, like, picture a planet separated from left to right, and the gobstopper marble type thing with the molten iron core right in the middle. And he outright said, "You see, God has made the planet with a molten iron core." I mean, right there, I just wanted to listen to a sermon.
Well,
And
this
shut
is
him
what.
off right there.
Well, this is why scientism has penetrated the pulpit. That's my main mission, is to educate Christians and pastors and people of leadership that it's pseudoscience that they're giving glory to God to, and not real science. And if you're a Christian, you believe the Bible. And if the Bible doesn't describe a heliocentric Earth or the creation of one, why do you side with pseudoscience? Now, once they see that it's pseudoscience, I'm hoping they do the right thing.
Right, that's what I want to ask you. How does he come off saying that when it doesn't say it in the Bible? Like,
Because
he outright said God made the planet with a molten iron core with tectonic plates.
it's real simple. They have accepted pseudoscience as real science because, as Nathan explains, once you establish the scientific method, okay, for cause and effect, and then take that and use it as a cloak for everything else, when those other things have now gone through a method, they're able to get away with it. So in every university, as you walk into the science halls, there's an archway and it's some kind of Latin or something about science. I mean, and then you got the news, you got NASA, you got all this cultural stuff pushing you, showing pictures. And so then you just say, okay, well, they must have proven it. And guess what? I believe God made everything. So then God must have made that. But they don't check into it. That's the point.
Right, so we'll ask the question, any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the center of a presupposed spherical Earth?
Yes, David Jeremiah, a very well-known preacher in San Diego, California, declared it right on TV yesterday.
Like, declared it? Any evidence?
That wouldn't be evidence.
Well, if you assert P waves and S waves, you'd need a flat baseline in order to measure the return signal.
That's
that
right.
angle.
That's right. Their claim of a
Sonogram?
spherical proof in P waves and S waves actually needs a flat Earth. Isn't that ace? Any scientific evidence of gravity?
No.
Which
It's not
one?
possible to have scientific evidence for something that is non-existent. The thing would have to exist in the first place.
Right, any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
No, they can't. They can't manipulate their IPs.
Any evidence of axial rotation, although we did cover it a little bit earlier? Of the Earth-based variety, of course.
Hold on. Axial rotation. We're moving? Is that what you're telling
No.
me?
That's the story.
No, I can take a helium balloon and release half of the helium and put in air, and it'll float in the center of my room, and it'll stay there and won't be moving. The Earth is moving.
How did you know
That
you
would
didn't
be-
buy an anti-gravity balloon? There you go.
Yeah.
Right.
You got me there.
With that, I'm going to say if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering Streams, then stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. A huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, and all that good stuff. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on an after show. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
company name.